Hi everybody, welcome to Sunday's Indycar on the 12th of August, and a happy birthday to me since I'm 57 today. I had a lovely time up in, where were we? We were up in the Highlands yesterday. My daughter and I went up to pick up my birthday present, which is a large astronomical telescope, one of the rarest in Scotland, a Russian-made telescope that I've been trying to find for years and finally got hold of one. And my lovely family decided to fund this as my birthday present. So that was my secret mission up to Blairgowrie yesterday, and the reason why I was saying hello to, yes, Blairgowrie at the High Street yesterday afternoon on the way up. Anyway, back to Glasgow, and I'm sorry to say I didn't manage to make the BBC demonstration at Pacific Quay yesterday. However, what's happened at Pacific Quay I think is important, and it's very important for me as a television kind of presenter myself to tell you what really happened at the BBC yesterday, rather than what the BBC is telling us happened, which is a slightly different story. As you know, about 200 demonstrators turned up to protest about BBC bias in the way that we've been doing for many months and years, actually, since the referendum, protesting that the BBC omits and misreports and deliberately silences people and omits what people say, and generally manipulates the news so that either Scotland looks bad or unhealthy or crime-ridden or its health services falling apart. But whatever it is, the BBC does a great job of rubbishing the country and talking up Britain. So anyway, these 200 people arrived, and the BBC decided to invite the leaders of, or the organisers of the protest, to come into the BBC to discuss the matter. Now, the BBC, as you know, have reported that this invitation was refused. In fact, they reported it twice to sort of emphasise the point that the organisers refused to talk to the BBC. But what actually happened was not quite as simple as that. The organisers were asked to a discussion inside the BBC buildings, which they politely refused, and then invited the BBC to come outside to discuss the matter in the full glare of public live stream television, where there could be no edits, where they were talking live and they couldn't be edited or recorded, and they would have to answer the questions truthfully on the spot. And guess what? They refused. They didn't actually mention anything about that in the BBC report, however. Of course, this is typical of what the BBC does, and in actual fact, this is the ultimate irony of BBC bias. They spin the story, and they've even spun the story of the actual demonstration against BBC bias in a biased way, so that it looks as if only one thing happened, that the demonstrators were invited inside and refused, and it was all terribly bad, and the Scottish independence people were all terribly bad and wouldn't discuss it, which is not the truth. The truth was that BBC were invited to come outside into the open air to discuss the matter in the glare of live stream cameras and witnesses of every description. Now, I wouldn't, if I had been the leader of that demonstration, have accepted the invitation to go inside the building to have a discussion with no witnesses, no other live streaming allowed inside the building, and what happened in there could be misreported as well. It needs to be, any discussions with the BBC need to be done in the full glare of live TV cameras that cannot be edited. And live streaming is one of the key ways that we can get the truth out. This is why shows like mine exist, because we allow the truth to come out. We show both sides of the story, and that's what Indycar is here to do today. David Llewellyn, friend of mine and one of the main proponents of the BBC bias demonstration, one of many activists, including Peter Bell and countless other people in the independence movement who turned up to that demonstration. This is the entire point that we're trying to make, that the BBC misreports, underreports and spins every single thing so that it seems like the people who are making the complaints are just being bad, we're just being anti-BBC or anti-English. And this is the point. We now know that the truth is very different, because the story has come out, and I'm telling it to you now as it really happened. And as it really happened, the BBC refused point blank to come outside and discuss the matter in the glare of live stream television. They would not appear on the alternative media to make their point. They're too scared to do it. And not only are they too scared to do it, but for them to do it would be to admit that the BBC is lying. For them to actually have to come outside, away from their comfort zone, their safety and security blanket of their big studios where they control everything, control the secrecy and control the spin and the editing and all the rest of it, to take them out of that comfort zone and put them on the spot at Pacific Quay in front of a live stream audience, they wouldn't do it. They bottled it. And that is one of the most important events that's happened actually in the Scottish media ever. In fact, since I can remember, since 2014, since the bias really began, about 2012 onwards, the BBC bias ramped up. So it's an important day, and if that demonstration was small, it doesn't matter, because it proved the point. It made the point perfectly that the BBC is biased. It even spun the event. It didn't even mention that it had refused an invitation to come outside and discuss the matter. And this is the whole point of media bias. This is what the BBC does, and this is why it is losing voters, why it is losing licence payers, and why people are switching off all across the UK. It's not just in Scotland, by the way, because they're misreporting the news about Jeremy Corbyn. They're attacking him as well in England. They're attacking everything which isn't Tory at the moment, to be honest with you. Okay, so that was really the point of the news today. While I was up in Blairgowrie, one of the best things about the trip that I think sank in for me was every single village I went through on the way up there had saltire flags flying in countless houses and gardens and businesses all the way up. I didn't see a single Union Jack on the entire trip from Perth all the way up to Blairgowrie, and about 14 miles beyond that I didn't see a single Union Jack, only saltires at every single village and every settlement. And that is an indication of how strongly people feel. No Union Jacks in that part of the Highlands at all. And that was interesting for me, because I'm not used to seeing places without at least one Union Jack fluttering forlornly somewhere. Times are changing, and people have woken up to what's going on with the BBC. And really that's all today's broadcast is about, getting the truth out yet again. BBC not telling the whole story, and too scared to come outside when they're invited. I mean, it's basically like somebody in the pub telling lies about you and spouting off, and you invite them outside to sort the matter out. Too frightened, too scared, don't have the bottle for it. And that is a big turning point for us in terms of media in the last 24 hours. I'll see you later. Bye for now.